Imagine transforming your life in less than a minute. Sounds too good to be true, right? But what if science backed it up? In this video, we're diving into 59 Seconds by Richard Wiseman, a book that shatters self-help myths and gives you proven research-backed strategies to boost your happiness, relationships, creativity, and more. Stick around till the end, because what you'll discover here could change how you think, feel, and live forever. Chapter 1. Rethinking Self-Help. Alright, let's start with a quick question. How many times have you heard things like, just visualize success, and you'll achieve it? Or think positive, and the universe will reward you? Sounds familiar, right? These ideas are everywhere in the self-help world, sold to us as foolproof ways to live our best lives. But what if I told you most of these feel-good mantras are not just misleading but could actually hold you back? That's exactly where Richard Wiseman begins in his book 59 Seconds. And trust me, his take is refreshing. Wiseman kicks off with a bold critique of the traditional self-help industry. You know, the kind of advice that sounds magical but often feels, well, useless. He doesn't just dismiss these ideas out of nowhere, he backs it up with real science. For example, he calls out the popular notion that visualizing your dream life is the key to success. While it sounds inspiring, studies show that visualizing the outcome without preparing for challenges can actually make you less motivated. Why? Because your brain gets a false sense of accomplishment from the daydream, leaving you less driven to take action. Another target of Wiseman's critique is the so-called law of attraction. You've probably heard the pitch, think positive thoughts, and the universe will send success your way. But let's be real for a second. Has anyone ever landed their dream job or solved a major problem by just thinking about it? Wiseman explains that this idea doesn't hold up under scientific scrutiny. Instead of attracting success, this mindset can create a dangerous trap. It makes people believe they don't need to take real, practical steps to reach their goals. Now, here's where Wiseman flips the script. Instead of tearing down self-help myths and leaving us in the rubble, he offers something much better. A fresh, science-based approach to personal growth. Forget the grand gestures, the hour-long rituals, or the endless journaling. Wiseman says you don't need to overhaul your life or spend years working on a better you. Instead, he introduces the concept of small, intentional actions, things you can do in less than a minute, that can have a surprisingly powerful impact. Think about that for a moment. One tiny action, just 59 seconds of your time, could make a measurable difference in your happiness, productivity, or even your relationships. Doesn't that sound way more manageable than all those massive self-help programs? And let's not forget Wiseman's tone here. It's not preachy or condescending. It's like having a chat with a friend who just happens to be a brilliant psychologist. He blends humor with hard-hitting facts, making even the most skeptical reader think, okay, maybe he's onto something. So, why does this introduction matter so much? It sets the stage for everything that follows. Wiseman isn't here to sell you fluff or make empty promises. He's here to challenge the status quo of self-help and prove that real, meaningful change doesn't have to be complicated or time-consuming. As we dive deeper into the book, you'll see how each chapter builds on this idea, tackling topics like happiness, motivation, and relationships, all with practical tips that are backed by science, not wishful thinking. But before we get into those, let's take a moment to reflect. Have we been overcomplicating self-improvement this whole time? Maybe the best way forward is to stop looking for magic answers and start embracing quick, simple actions that actually work. Intrigued? Good, because this is just the beginning. Chapter 2. Happiness. Why smiles are contagious. Let's talk about happiness, the one thing we all want more of but often feel like we're chasing in the wrong places. We're bombarded with messages that tell us happiness comes from having the latest gadgets, achieving fame, or thinking positively 24/7. But how much of that actually works? Richard Wiseman takes a totally different approach in the second chapter of 59 Seconds, showing us that true happiness isn't about grand gestures or expensive stuff. It's about simple, everyday actions backed by science. Now, let's start with something so simple it might surprise you. Gratitude. Wiseman shares a fascinating study where people were asked to write down 3 things they were grateful for every day. Sounds almost too easy, right? But here's the kicker. This tiny habit significantly boosted their happiness over time and even reduced symptoms of depression. Why does this work? Well, it's like retraining your brain to focus on the good stuff instead of dwelling on the negatives. Think about it. If your mind is a spotlight, practicing gratitude helps you shine it on what's going right in your life instead of getting stuck in a loop of worry or frustration. And it doesn't stop there. Wiseman highlights another simple, yet powerful way to increase happiness: connection. Let's talk about smiling for a second. Did you know that smiling is contagious? Yep, there's actual science to back this up. When you see someone smile, your brain instinctively mirrors that emotion, lifting your mood without you even realizing it. And it works both ways. The next time you smile at a stranger, you're not just spreading positivity. You're giving your own brain a little happiness boost, too. Here's a quick challenge for you. The next time you're out and about, try smiling at someone, a coworker, a barista, or even a stranger on the street. See how they react. Chances are, they'll smile back, and you'll both feel better. It's such a small thing, but it creates a ripple effect of positivity that can brighten anyone's day. Wiseman also dives into the power of small acts of kindness. Ever paid for someone's coffee in line or complimented a friend out of the blue? Science says these tiny gestures don't just make the other person feel good, they actually trigger a chemical response in your brain that boosts your happiness, too. It's like a win-win. By helping others, you're also helping yourself. Now, let's tackle a big myth: spending money on things versus experiences. How often do we think, if I just had that new phone, or car, or outfit, I'd be happier? Wiseman flips this idea on its head, explaining that material possessions only bring short-term joy. Experiences, on the other hand, like going to a concert, taking a trip, or even sharing a meal with friends, create lasting memories and deeper connections. Why? Because they engage us emotionally and socially, making them far more fulfilling in the long run. So, next time you're deciding between buying something or doing something, maybe go for the experience. You'll thank yourself later. But wait, what about those moments when life gets overwhelming? Many of us turn to venting our frustrations, thinking it'll help us blow off steam. Wiseman says, not so fast. Research shows that venting anger often just amplifies those negative feelings. Instead, he suggests channeling that energy into something more constructive, like reflecting on what you're grateful for, writing down positive events from your day, or simply spending quality time with someone you care about. Now, here's what I love about this chapter. It's not about overhauling your life or setting impossible goals. It's about the little things. Writing down a gratitude list. Smiling more. Choosing experiences over things. Performing a random act of kindness. These aren't huge, time-consuming tasks. They're small tweaks that take less than a minute but can make a world of difference. So let me ask you, what's one small thing you can do today to boost your happiness? Maybe it's writing down something you're thankful for. Maybe it's smiling at someone you don't know. Whatever it is, try it, and notice how it makes you feel. Because, as Wiseman reminds us, happiness isn't about waiting for the perfect moment or achieving the perfect life. It's about those tiny, intentional actions we take every day. And the best part? They only take 59 seconds. What do you think? Are you ready to try out one of these simple strategies? Let me know in the comments, or better yet, share something you're grateful for right now. Let's keep the positivity going. Chapter 3, Persuasion. How to get what you want. Alright, let's talk about persuasion. Whether you realize it or not, you're persuading people all the time. At work, with friends, in relationships, and even when deciding what to eat for dinner. But how often does it feel like an uphill battle, as though getting someone to agree with you requires a mountain of effort or a sprinkle of magic? Well, in Chapter 3 of 59 Seconds, Richard Wiseman reveals that persuasion isn't about being pushy or having the perfect sales pitch. It's about making small, thoughtful adjustments to how you communicate. Let's kick things off with something surprisingly simple: reciprocity. Have you ever noticed how you feel a little obligated to return a favor when someone does something nice for you? That's reciprocity in action. Wiseman explains that people are hardwired to want to give back when they receive kindness. Imagine this: you're at work, and a colleague buys you a coffee out of the blue. When they later ask for help on a project, aren't you more likely to say yes? That's because you want to repay their generosity, even if it's subconscious. Wiseman shares a fun experiment where waitstaff subtly tapped into this principle. Servers who added a personal touch, like leaving a smiley face on the receipt or offering an extra mint, earned significantly higher tips. Why? Because those small gestures made the customers feel valued and more inclined to reciprocate. So, here's the takeaway. If you want to persuade someone, start by doing something kind or thoughtful for them. It doesn't have to be grand, just enough to show you care. Now, let's dive into another brilliant insight: social proof. This one is all about how humans love to follow the crowd. Picture this: you're at a restaurant you've never been to before. You notice that one dish on the menu has a little note that says, "Most popular choice." Doesn't that make you more likely to order it? Wiseman explores how tapping into this natural tendency can be a game changer. Take hotels, for example. Many have those little cards in the bathroom asking guests to reuse their towels to save water. When they added a line saying, "Most guests who stayed in this room reused their towels," compliance shot up. Why? Because people trust what others are doing, especially in unfamiliar situations. The next time you're trying to persuade someone, try framing your argument by showing that others are already on board. It's a subtle nudge that works wonders. Now, here's where things get even more interesting: the foot in the door technique. Imagine this scenario. A stranger knocks on your door and asks you to put a giant, ugly sign in your front yard that says, "Drive safely." Would you agree? Probably not. But what if, a few weeks earlier, they'd asked you to sign a simple petition about safe driving? Research shows that once people commit to a small, easy request, they're more likely to agree to a larger one later. It's like building trust in stages. So, if you're trying to get a big yes, start with a small one. Let's talk about another secret weapon: how you phrase your requests. The words you choose can make all the difference. Instead of saying something vague like, "Would you mind helping me with this?" try, "Helping me with this would make such a big difference." See the shift? The second version highlights the impact of their help, making it harder to say no. It's not about tricking anyone. It's about framing your request in a way that feels meaningful to them. And finally, there's likability. This might sound obvious, but people are more likely to say yes to someone they like. Wiseman shares some quick ways to boost your likability, like smiling, finding common ground, and mirroring the other person's body language. Think about it. When you meet someone who seems genuinely interested in you, isn't it easier to connect with them? Building rapport isn't just a social skill, it's a persuasion superpower. Here's an example. Let's say you're negotiating at work. Instead of jumping straight to your demands, spend a few minutes finding something you have in common with the other person. Maybe a shared hobby or mutual connection. This simple act of building a rapport creates a foundation of trust, making them more open to your ideas. What makes this chapter so impactful is how practical it is. Wiseman isn't telling you to become a master manipulator or to memorize some overly complicated strategy. He's saying that effective persuasion comes down to understanding human behavior and applying small, thoughtful techniques. So, let me ask you, what's one situation where you'd like to be more persuasive? Is it asking your boss for a raise? Convincing your partner to try a new restaurant? Or maybe getting your kids to clean their room without a battle? Whatever it is, try one of these strategies: reciprocity, social proof, the foot in the door technique, or just building rapport, and see what happens. Remember, persuasion isn't about forcing someone's hand. It's about creating an environment where they want to say yes. And with Wiseman's tips, you can do that in less than a minute. What do you think? Which of these strategies will you try first? Let's talk about it in the comments, because trust me, these little changes can lead to big results. Chapter 4: Motivation. The power of small changes. Let's face it, motivation can feel like a tricky thing to master. One day, you're fired up and ready to take on the world, and the next, even getting out of bed feels like an Olympic sport. But here's the good news. In Chapter 4 of 59 Seconds, Richard Wiseman takes the mystery out of motivation. Spoiler alert, it's not about willpower, massive leaps, or waiting for inspiration to strike. It's about making small, deliberate changes that keep you moving forward. And trust me, these insights are game changers. First, let's tackle a big misconception. Motivation doesn't come from vague ideas like thinking big. Sure, having big dreams is inspiring, but Wiseman argues that sustainable motivation comes from something much more practical: implementation intentions. Don't worry, it's not as complicated as it sounds. Here's the idea. Instead of saying, "I'll exercise more" or "I want to eat healthier," you plan out exactly when, where, and how you'll take action. For example, saying, "I'll go for a 30-minute jog at 7 a.m. on Tuesday in the park" is way more effective. Why? Because it eliminates the wiggle room. You're no longer negotiating with yourself about when or if you'll do it. It's already decided. Let me ask you this. How often do we leave goals open-ended? Saying things like, "I'll start tomorrow," or "I'll do it when I have time." The truth is, tomorrow never feels like the right time unless you've already penciled it into your day. So, think about a goal you've been putting off. What's one small step you could schedule right now? Now, here's where it gets even more interesting. Wiseman introduces the progress principle, which basically says that celebrating small wins can fuel big results. Think about the last time you checked something off a to-do list. Didn't it feel amazing? That's because completing even a tiny task triggers a release of dopamine, the brain's feel-good chemical. This isn't just about feeling good, it's about building momentum. Small successes make you want to keep going. Here's a relatable example. Imagine you're trying to clean your messy room. The thought of tackling the whole thing is overwhelming, right? But what if you started with just one drawer? Once that's done, you feel a little accomplished, and suddenly, the idea of tackling the next drawer doesn't seem so bad. That's the progress principle in action. Small wins lead to big changes. Another fascinating insight is about visualization. Now, we've all heard the advice to visualize success. But Wiseman points out that imagining the outcome, like standing on a podium or holding a diploma, isn't as effective as visualizing the process. Instead of daydreaming about the finish line, picture yourself doing the work, attending classes, studying late at night, or hitting the gym regularly. Why? Because this type of visualization prepares your brain for the actual effort involved. It makes the goal feel more achievable and primes you to take action. Speaking of action, let's talk about temptation bundling, one of my favorite strategies from this chapter. It's all about pairing something you enjoy with something you'd rather avoid. For example, if working out feels like a chore, try listening to your favorite music or an engaging podcast while you exercise. Suddenly, it's not just a workout, it's also 30 minutes of entertainment. This little trick can make sticking to habits so much easier because you're rewarding yourself in real time. Now, here's something that might surprise you. Public declarations of your goals can backfire. We've all heard the advice to tell people our plans to stay accountable, right? But Wiseman highlights research showing that talking about your goals can sometimes create a false sense of accomplishment. Think about it. When you share your big ambitions, people often congratulate you just for having the idea. And that praise can trick your brain into feeling like you've already made progress, even if you haven't done anything yet. Instead, Wiseman suggests keeping your plans to yourself and focusing on taking quiet, consistent action. Finally, let's touch on the importance of environment. Sometimes, motivation isn't about willpower at all. It's about setting yourself up for success. For example, if you want to exercise more, leave your workout clothes by the door so they're the first thing you see in the morning. Trying to eat healthier? Keep fruits and veggies in plain sight instead of hiding them in the back of the fridge. These little changes might seem insignificant, but they can make a huge difference by reducing friction and making good habits easier to follow. By the end of this chapter, Wiseman's message is clear. Motivation isn't some magical force that you either have or don't have. It's something you can engineer with small, practical changes. So, here's a question for you. What's one goal you've been struggling to start or stick to? Maybe it's working out, writing a book, or even just drinking more water. Whatever it is, try applying one of these strategies. Whether it's breaking the goal into smaller steps, visualizing the process, or bundling it with something you enjoy. Remember, you don't need to overhaul your entire life to stay motivated. Sometimes, all it takes is a single, intentional step. And when you string enough of those steps together, you're on your way to something amazing. So, what's your first step going to be? Share it in the comments. I'd love to hear how you're planning to take action. Chapter 5. Creativity. A shortcut to innovation. Let's talk about creativity. For years, it's been treated like some mystical power, a gift only a select few possess. You've probably heard someone say, "Oh, I'm just not creative," as though creativity is a talent you either have or you don't. But in Chapter 5 of 59 Seconds, Richard Wiseman flips this idea on its head. He shows us that creativity isn't some rare, magical trait. It's a skill, and with the right techniques, anyone can tap into it. Even better, some of these techniques are so simple you can start using them right away. Now, let's start with one of Wiseman's most surprising points: breaking away from routine. Think about your daily habits. Maybe you take the same route to work, eat the same meals, or always sit in the same spot at the coffee shop. While routines are comforting, they can also trap your brain in familiar patterns, making it harder to think outside the box. Wiseman explains that creativity thrives on novelty. Even small changes, like rearranging your workspace, walking a different way home, or trying a cuisine you've never had before, can spark new ideas. It's like giving your brain a gentle nudge to see the world differently. Here's a quick challenge. What's one thing you could do differently today? Maybe work in a new spot, listen to a genre of music you've never tried, or even take a walk in a part of town you rarely visit. These tiny changes might seem trivial, but they help your mind break free from its usual patterns. Next up, Wiseman introduces a counterintuitive idea. Constraints can actually boost creativity. At first, this might sound strange. After all, wouldn't more freedom lead to more ideas? But research shows the opposite. When there are no boundaries, the sheer number of possibilities can overwhelm us. By setting limits, like using only 3 colors in a design or solving a problem within a tight time frame, we're forced to think more inventively. It's like giving your creativity a framework to play within. Think of it this way. Imagine someone hands you a blank canvas and says, "Paint anything you want." Where do you even start? Now imagine they say, "Paint a sunset using only shades of blue and green." Suddenly, you have a direction, and your brain kicks into gear finding clever ways to meet the challenge. Constraints aren't restrictions, they're creative fuel. Now, let's talk about something that might make you smile: daydreaming. How many times have you caught yourself zoning out, only to snap back and think, "Ugh, I'm wasting time"? Well, Wiseman argues that daydreaming isn't a waste, it's a secret weapon. Studies show that letting your mind wander, especially after you've been focused on a problem, can lead to those famous aha moments. Here's an example. Ever had a brilliant idea hit you in the shower, while driving, or even while doing something mundane like folding laundry? That's your subconscious mind working behind the scenes, connecting ideas in ways your conscious mind can't. Wiseman suggests intentionally building in moments of relaxation, whether it's taking a walk, doodling, or just sitting quietly. These activities give your brain the space it needs to generate fresh ideas. Another tool Wiseman explores is random association. This one's a lot of fun and great for breaking out of conventional thinking. Here's how it works. Take 2 random words. Let's say, umbrella and shoes. Now, try to connect them. Maybe you come up with an umbrella that folds into a compact shoe-like case for easy carrying. The point isn't to invent the next big thing, though you might. It's to train your brain to make unexpected connections. These exercises are like a creativity workout, strengthening your ability to think in new ways. Here's a question for you. What 2 random objects are near you right now? Try connecting them and see what creative idea you come up with. Who knows? It might lead to something brilliant. Wiseman also busts a huge myth about brainstorming. We've all been told that group brainstorming sessions are the best way to generate ideas, right? Well, it turns out that's not always true. Research shows that individuals often come up with more original and diverse ideas when working alone. Why? Because in a group, people tend to hold back, afraid of being judged or going off track. Wiseman suggests starting with solo brainstorming to let your ideas flow freely, then bringing those ideas to a group to refine and build on them. It's the best of both worlds. And finally, let's talk about mood. Did you know that people in a good mood are far more likely to think creatively? Wiseman explains that positivity opens up your mind, making it easier to see new possibilities. Think about the last time you laughed really hard or watched a funny video. Didn't everything seem a little brighter afterward? Laughter, humor, and joy aren't just feel-good moments. They're creativity boosters. So, the next time you're stuck on a problem, try watching something that makes you laugh or spending a few minutes doing something that brings you joy. It's like hitting the reset button on your brain. By the end of this chapter, Wiseman has completely redefined what it means to be creative. It's not about waiting for inspiration to strike or being a natural artist or innovator. It's about creating the right conditions, breaking routines, embracing constraints, letting your mind wander, and finding joy in the process. Here's my challenge for you. What's one small change you can make today to spark your creativity? Maybe try working in a new spot, pairing random ideas, or taking a few minutes to daydream. Whatever it is, give it a shot and see what happens. Remember, creativity isn't some rare gift. It's a skill, and with these simple techniques, it's one you can start sharpening right now. So, what's your next creative idea? Let's talk about it in the comments. I'd love to hear how you're putting these tips into action. Chapter 6, Attraction. The Science of Romance. Alright, let's dive into one of the most fascinating and often puzzling topics of all, attraction. Why are we drawn to certain people? What makes sparks fly? And how can we nurture those sparks into something meaningful? In Chapter 6 of 59 Seconds, Richard Wiseman unpacks the science behind romance, giving us a front-row seat to what really goes on behind the scenes of love and connection. Spoiler alert, it's not about cheesy pickup lines or waiting for Cupid's arrow. Let's start with the basics. First impressions. We all know they matter, but Wiseman reveals just how much. In the blink of an eye, people form opinions about you based on subtle cues, your body language, tone of voice, and even how you carry yourself. For example, research shows that maintaining open, confident posture and flashing a genuine smile can make you instantly more approachable and attractive. But here's the kicker. It's not about pretending to be someone you're not. Confidence combined with warmth is what truly draws people in. Think about it. How much easier is it to connect with someone who seems comfortable in their own skin? And speaking of connection, let's talk about one of Wiseman's most surprising insights: similarity and familiarity. Contrary to the old saying that opposites attract, science tells a different story. Research shows that we're far more likely to be drawn to people who share our values, interests, and even subtle traits like speech patterns. Why? Because similarities create a sense of comfort and understanding. Take this for example. Have you ever had a conversation with someone who's into the same hobbies, music, or shows as you? Doesn't it feel like the conversation just clicks? That's the power of shared interests at work. And then there's the mere exposure effect. Basically, the more you see someone, the more attractive they tend to appear. This is why relationships often blossom in places like classrooms, offices, or even your local coffee shop. Familiarity builds comfort, and comfort often leads to connection. Now, here's something that might surprise you. Small acts can have a big impact. Wiseman dives into how tiny, meaningful gestures can deepen romantic connections. One study he highlights involved participants who shared personal stories and engaged in prolonged eye contact. The result? A much stronger sense of closeness compared to those who stuck to small talk. The takeaway here is simple. Vulnerability is key. When you show genuine interest in someone, really listening to their thoughts and feelings, you create a sense of intimacy that's hard to ignore. Now let's pivot to a topic that gets a lot of attention: Physical attraction. What makes us find someone physically appealing? Wiseman explores the role of evolutionary psychology, explaining why traits like symmetrical features, healthy skin, and physical fitness are often seen as indicators of good health and genetics. But here's the thing. While these traits might spark initial attraction, deeper, lasting connections are built on shared values, emotional intimacy, and genuine understanding. So yes, looks can open the door, but it's what's inside that keeps people coming back.
Here's where things get really fun. Creating chemistry through excitement. Wiseman explains a phenomenon called the misattribution of arousal. In simple terms, when your heart races, whether from an adrenaline-pumping activity or a thrilling experience, your brain can associate that physical excitement with romantic attraction. Ever noticed how a date at a theme park or a high-energy dance class feels more exciting than just grabbing coffee? That's misattributed arousal at work. So, if you're planning a date, why not try something a little adventurous? It could be a hike, a live concert, or even a roller coaster. The excitement might just amplify the connection. But Wiseman doesn't stop at explaining the science. He gives us practical tips for finding and building romance. Let's start with online dating. Instead of creating a generic profile, he suggests emphasizing what makes you unique while highlighting shared interests. It's about standing out while also showing how you align with potential matches. And when it comes to in-person interactions, sincerity is your best friend. Compliments, for example, go a long way, especially when they're specific and heartfelt. Instead of saying, "You look nice," try something like, "That color really brings out your eyes." It's thoughtful, personal, and shows you're paying attention. Another crucial skill? Active listening. How often do we really listen to understand, rather than just waiting for our turn to speak? Wiseman emphasizes that really listening, can make the other person feel valued and understood. It's one of the simplest yet most powerful ways to build emotional intimacy. By the end of this chapter, Wiseman leaves us with an inspiring message. Attraction isn't just about biology or luck. It's about creating the right conditions, confidence, vulnerability, shared experiences, and building connections that are both meaningful and lasting. So, here's a question for you. What's one small thing you could do to strengthen a connection with someone today? Maybe it's giving a genuine compliment, taking time to really listen, or even planning an exciting activity together. Whatever it is, give it a try and see how it transforms your interactions. Because at the end of the day, romance isn't a mystery. It's a beautiful blend of science and human connection. And as Wiseman reminds us, a little effort can go a long way. Chapter 7: Stress. Staying cool under pressure. Let's talk about stress. We've all been there, tight deadlines, endless to-do lists, unexpected challenges, and that gnawing feeling of being completely overwhelmed. Sound familiar? Stress has become such a common part of modern life that many of us feel like we're just stuck with it. But in Chapter 7 of 59 Seconds, Richard Wiseman delivers some amazing news. Stress isn't an unbeatable enemy. With the right tools and mindset, you can manage it even in the most pressure-packed situations. To start, let's look at what stress actually is. Wiseman explains it through the lens of biology. Back in the day, think caveman era, stress was a survival tool. Imagine you're out hunting, and a predator suddenly appears. Your body's fight-or-flight response kicks in, flooding you with adrenaline and cortisol. Your heart races, your senses sharpen, and you're ready to either fight the threat or run like crazy. Fast forward to today, and while we're not dodging saber-toothed tigers, that same response gets triggered by modern stressors. Work emails, traffic jams, or arguments. The problem? Chronic stress. When that response never truly shuts off, can take a serious toll on your health. It drains your energy, fogs your mind, and even weakens your immune system. But here's the silver lining. Wiseman offers quick, practical techniques to calm that stress response and regain control. Let's dive into a few of them. First up, breathing exercises. It might sound overly simple, but slowing your breathing can work wonders. Try this. Inhale slowly for 4 seconds. Hold that breath for another 4. And then exhale for 4 seconds. Repeat this a few times. What happens? Your heart rate slows, your cortisol levels drop, and your brain gets the message that the crisis is over. It's like hitting the reset button on your body. Another technique Wiseman swears by is progressive muscle relaxation. Here's how it works. Focus on one muscle group at a time, like your shoulders or legs. Tense it for a few seconds, then release. Moving through your entire body this way can help melt away tension you didn't even realize you were carrying. Plus, it sends a signal to your brain that it's time to relax. And let's not forget visualization. Close your eyes and imagine yourself in a calming place. Maybe it's a sunny beach with waves gently rolling in, or a peaceful forest filled with birdsong. Studies show that picturing these serene scenes can actually lower your heart rate and reduce feelings of stress. So, next time you're in a tough spot, give your brain a mental vacation. It's quicker than booking a flight. Now, let's talk about one of the most powerful tools in your stress-fighting arsenal, reframing. Think about how often stress comes from our own perspective. You have a big presentation coming up, and the thought of it feels overwhelming. But what if you shifted your mindset? Instead of, "I'm not ready for this," try, "This is my chance to show what I can do." This small change in thinking can take the edge off and help you approach challenges with more confidence. Here's a question for you. What's one stressful situation you could reframe right now? Think about it. How can you turn it into an opportunity or a learning moment? Wiseman also emphasizes the role of social support. When you're stressed, talking to someone you trust can make a world of difference. Whether it's a family member, friend, or coworker, sharing your feelings helps you feel less isolated and can even lower physical signs of stress, like high blood pressure. And it's not just about venting. Small acts of connection, like sending a supportive text or checking in with a loved one, strengthen your social bonds, which makes it easier to face life's challenges. Another fascinating stress-busting method Wiseman highlights is the writing cure. Studies show that spending 15 minutes a day writing about your feelings can reduce anxiety and even improve physical health. Why? Because putting your emotions into words gives you clarity and helps you process what's really going on. It's like organizing your thoughts so they don't feel so overwhelming. And of course, Wiseman doesn't forget the lighter side of stress relief: humor. Did you know that laughter releases endorphins and lowers cortisol levels? Watching a funny video, swapping jokes with a friend, or even just recalling a hilarious memory can instantly shift your mood. Laughter isn't just a distraction. It's a scientifically proven stress reliever. So, when in doubt, find something to laugh about. Now let's round things off with a few practical takeaways. Wiseman offers some fantastic tips to keep stress in check. 1. Keep a gratitude journal. Taking a few minutes each day to reflect on what you're thankful for can boost your mood and build resilience. 2. Declutter your environment. A tidy space can help create a calmer mind. When your surroundings feel under control, so do you. 3. Set boundaries. Learning to say no protects your time and energy. Remember, it's okay to prioritize your well-being. 4. Adopt the 2-minute rule. If something takes less than 2 minutes to do, handle it immediately. This prevents small tasks from piling up and becoming overwhelming. By the end of this chapter, Wiseman has completely redefined how we think about stress. It's not some invincible monster. It's a part of life that we can manage with the right tools and mindset. So, here's a challenge for you. What's one stress-busting technique you can try today? Maybe it's a breathing exercise, reaching out to a friend, or even just watching a funny video. Give it a shot and notice how it makes you feel. Because as Wiseman reminds us, staying cool under pressure isn't about avoiding stress altogether. It's about learning how to face it with confidence, calm, and maybe even a little humor. What's your go-to way to manage stress? Let's talk about it in the comments. I'd love to hear your tips. Chapter 8: Decision Making. Picking the right path. Let's talk about decision making. Whether it's something small like choosing what to eat for lunch, or something major like switching careers, we're faced with decisions every single day. And let's be honest, sometimes it feels like the pressure to make the right choice is overwhelming, doesn't it? In Chapter 8 of 59 Seconds, Richard Wiseman takes us by the hand and walks us through the fascinating science of decision-making. He breaks it down into simple, practical strategies that make choosing the best path less stressful and a lot more manageable. First, let's tackle one of the biggest culprits behind poor decision-making: overthinking. Have you ever been so caught up in analyzing every single detail of a choice that you ended up feeling even more confused than when you started? Wiseman explains that this is incredibly common and has a name: decision paralysis. The more we think and overanalyze, the more stuck we feel. Even worse, overthinking often leads to regret because we focus so much on what-if scenarios. So, what's the solution? Wiseman says, simplify. Focus on the key factors that actually matter. For example, if you're choosing between two apartments, ask yourself, which one fits my budget and lifestyle better? Forget about whether one has slightly fancier countertops. It's not as important in the grand scheme of things. The less noise you let into your decision, the clearer the choice becomes. Now here's where it gets really interesting. Wiseman highlights the incredible power of your subconscious mind. While we often rely on conscious thought to make decisions, research shows that stepping away from a problem and letting your subconscious do the work can lead to better outcomes. For instance, let's say you're trying to decide on a major purchase, like a car. Instead of obsessing over every detail, try distracting yourself, go for a walk, read a book, or even sleep on it. Your subconscious mind will quietly process all the information, and you'll often wake up with a clearer sense of what feels right. But what about those decisions where you're stuck between two seemingly equal options? Here's where Wiseman shares a fun and surprisingly effective trick. Flip a coin. Now I know what you're thinking. Are we really leaving big decisions to chance? Not exactly. The genius of this method lies in how you feel when you see the result. If the coin lands on one option and you feel a little disappointed, that's your subconscious telling you that you actually prefer the other choice. It's a quick and clever way to uncover your true feelings. Let's shift gears to something Wiseman calls choice overload. Have you ever been to a restaurant with a menu so long it made your head spin? Or tried to shop online for a pair of shoes, only to feel paralyzed by the sheer number of options? This is choice overload in action. Wiseman points to a fascinating study where shoppers were more likely to buy jam when presented with 6 flavors compared to 24. Why? Because too many choices create anxiety, making it harder to commit. The takeaway here is simple. Fewer options mean less stress and more satisfaction. If you're faced with a sea of choices, narrow them down. Set criteria ahead of time to filter out what doesn't fit. For example, if you're buying a laptop, decide on your top 3 must-haves, like price, battery life, and screen size, and ignore the rest. Now, let's talk about a concept that's both quirky and brilliant: the 37% rule. This idea comes from mathematics and psychology, and it's surprisingly practical. The rule says that when faced with a series of options, like apartments to rent, job candidates to hire, or even people to date, you should spend the first 37% of your search evaluating without committing. After that, pick the next option that's better than anything you've seen so far. It's a little unconventional, but Wiseman shows how this method can help you make decisions efficiently while minimizing regret. And speaking of regret, let's address the elephant in the room. One of the biggest reasons decision-making feels so stressful is the fear of making the wrong choice. What if you pick the wrong job, the wrong house, the wrong path? Wiseman's advice is to let go of the idea that there's a perfect decision. Instead, focus on committing fully to whatever choice you make. Research shows that people who embrace their decisions and stop second-guessing themselves are happier and more satisfied overall. To help you navigate decisions with ease, Wiseman ends the chapter with a handful of practical tips. 1. Set a deadline. Giving yourself a time limit to decide prevents you from overthinking and forces you to focus on what really matters. 2. Limit your options. As we learned earlier, narrowing down your choices reduces anxiety and makes the process feel more manageable. 3. Trust your gut. While intuition isn't perfect, it's often a reliable guide, especially for decisions that involve emotions or personal preferences. 4. Use the October 10-10 rule. Ask yourself, how will I feel about this choice 10 minutes from now? How about 10 months or 10 years? This perspective can help you separate short-term emotions from long-term impact. 5. Visualize the future. Picture yourself living with each option. How do you feel in each scenario? Which one brings you the most peace or excitement? By the end of this chapter, Wiseman has completely reframed decision-making. It's not about being perfect or agonizing over every detail. It's about being thoughtful, confident, and sometimes even a little playful in how you approach your choices. So, here's my question for you. What's a decision you've been putting off? Whether it's something big or small, try using one of Wiseman's strategies to tackle it today. Maybe flip a coin, set a time limit, or take a break to let your subconscious do the work. And remember, no decision is final.
Every choice brings new opportunities to learn, grow, and adapt. What's your go-to strategy for making decisions? Let's talk about it in the comments. I'd love to hear how you approach those tough choices. Chapter 9. Parenting. Raising happy, resilient kids. Let's talk about parenting. If there's one role in life that feels like it comes without a manual, this is it. Parenting can be equal parts rewarding, confusing, and overwhelming. You want to raise happy, confident, and resilient kids, but how do you know if you're doing it right? Thankfully, in Chapter 9 of 59 Seconds, Richard Wiseman steps in with science-backed strategies that make the art of parenting a little less mysterious, and a lot more achievable. First, let's tackle one of the biggest myths out there: perfect parenting. If you've ever felt pressure to be the perfect parent, Wiseman has some good news. Perfection isn't the goal. In fact, trying to create a flawless upbringing can do more harm than good. Research shows that what kids need most isn't a picture-perfect parent. It's someone who's present, engaged, and responsive. Being good enough is more than enough. It's about showing up and being emotionally available, not micromanaging every detail of your child's life. Now, let's get into one of the most powerful tools in your parenting toolbox: praise. But here's the catch: how you praise your child matters. Wiseman dives into groundbreaking research by psychologist Carol Dweck, who found that praising effort instead of ability can shape how kids approach challenges. Think about the difference between saying, "You're so smart," versus "You worked so hard on this." When kids hear praise focused on effort, they develop what's called a growth mindset. They start to believe that their abilities can improve with practice and persistence. This makes them more likely to take on challenges, push through setbacks, and view failure as part of the learning process. On the flip side, praising inherent talent, like intelligence or natural ability, can make kids afraid to fail because they think it defines them. Here's a question for you. How do you typically praise the children in your life? The next time you compliment them, try focusing on their effort, creativity, or determination. It's a small shift that can have a huge impact. Wiseman also emphasizes the importance of independence. It's natural to want to protect your kids from every possible failure or disappointment, but overprotection can backfire. When children don't get the chance to make decisions, solve problems, or take small risks, they miss out on valuable opportunities to build confidence and resilience. Imagine this: a child learning to ride a bike. If you never let go of the seat, they'll never experience the wobble or the thrill of finding their balance. Letting kids stumble, within reason, helps them learn that they can recover from setbacks. It's not about throwing them into the deep end. It's about giving them the tools to swim. Now, let's talk about one of the most heartwarming parts of this chapter: shared activities. Wiseman highlights the magic of spending quality time together, even if it's just 15 minutes a day. Whether it's reading a story, baking cookies, or playing a quick game, These moments strengthen the emotional bond between parent and child. Think about it. Do you remember a specific gift you got as a kid, or do you remember the times your family played board games or built forts in the living room? It's the shared experiences that stick. And the best part? It's not about the quantity of time, it's about the quality. Wiseman also dives into the benefits of teaching gratitude and kindness. Encouraging kids to say thank you, keep a gratitude journal, or perform small acts of kindness isn't just good manners, it's a recipe for happiness. Research shows that gratitude practices help children develop a positive outlook and a deeper appreciation for the people and experiences around them. Here's an idea. Try starting a bedtime gratitude ritual. Ask your child, "What's one good thing that happened today?" It's a simple way to end the day on a positive note and teach them to focus on life's little blessings. Discipline is another big topic, and Wiseman stresses that consistency beats severity every time. Kids thrive when they know what to expect, so clear rules and predictable consequences create a sense of security. Think of it like this. Imagine trying to navigate a road without any traffic signs or signals. It'd be chaos, right? That's what inconsistent discipline feels like to a child. Clear boundaries, calmly enforced, help them understand what's expected and why. Now, let's touch on something that can shape a child's entire outlook: optimism. Wiseman explains that teaching kids to reframe setbacks can build emotional resilience. For example, instead of letting them say, "I'm terrible at math," help them reframe it as, "This problem is tough, but I can improve with practice." It's a small shift, but it teaches kids to see challenges as temporary and solvable rather than insurmountable. Finally, Wiseman reminds parents of something many forget: self-care. Parenting is demanding, and it's easy to put yourself last on the list. But here's the truth. Stressed, exhausted parents can't provide the emotional support their kids need. Taking time for yourself, whether it's exercising, reading, or just relaxing, sets an example for your kids, too. It shows them the importance of balance and self-respect. Wiseman wraps up this chapter with some practical tips you can start using today. 1. Praise effort, not ability. Focus on hard work, determination, and problem solving. 2. Encourage independence. Let kids make choices and learn from their mistakes. 3. Share quality time. Even 15 minutes of focused attention can strengthen your bond. 4. Teach gratitude. Help kids recognize and appreciate the good things in their lives. 5. Be consistent. Set clear boundaries and follow through calmly. 6. Foster optimism. Teach kids to view setbacks as opportunities to learn. Parenting doesn't have to be perfect to be effective. As Wiseman reminds us, it's the small, thoughtful actions, taken consistently, that make the biggest difference. So, here's my question for you. What's one parenting strategy you can try today? Maybe it's shifting the way you praise, starting a gratitude practice, or carving out a little extra quality time. Whatever it is, remember that it's not about grand gestures, it's about showing up with intention and love. What's your favorite parenting tip or memory? Let's share some ideas in the comments. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Chapter 10. Personality. Knowing yourself better. Let's wrap things up with a topic that's as intriguing as it is personal. Personality. Who are you, really? What drives your decisions, shapes your relationships, and influences the way you see the world? In the final chapter of 59 Seconds, Richard Wiseman dives into the fascinating science of personality, giving us the tools to understand ourselves on a deeper level. But don't worry, this isn't about slapping labels on people or boxing them into categories. It's about self-awareness, growth, and learning how to live in harmony with who you truly are. Wiseman begins with an introduction to the Big Five personality traits, a framework widely used in psychology to describe the broad dimensions of personality. Let's break it down. 1. Openness to experience. Are you someone who loves exploring new ideas, cultures, and experiences? If so, you probably score high in openness. On the other hand, if you prefer familiar routines and traditional ways of doing things, you might lean toward the lower end of this spectrum. Neither is better. It's all about how you thrive. 2. Conscientiousness. This is the planner versus spontaneous spectrum. Highly conscientious people are organized, reliable, and disciplined. They're the ones who probably have color-coded calendars. Those on the lower end? Let's just say they embrace life's chaos a bit more freely. 3. Extroversion. Extroverts draw energy from being around people, while introverts recharge in solitude. Wiseman is quick to point out that being introverted doesn't mean you're antisocial. It simply means you value quality over quantity in your interactions. 4. Agreeableness. This trait measures kindness, empathy, and cooperation. High scorers are warm and easygoing, while those on the lower end might be more direct and independent. Again, it's not about good or bad, it's about understanding your natural tendencies. 5. Neuroticism. This dimension reflects emotional stability. If you're high in neuroticism, you might experience worry or emotional ups and downs more often. If you're on the lower end, you're likely the calm, steady presence people turn to in a crisis. So, here's a fun question for you. Where do you think you fall on each of these traits? Reflecting on this isn't about judgment. It's about getting to know yourself better. Wiseman explains that self-awareness is like having a cheat sheet for life. When you understand your personality, you can tailor your choices to align with your natural tendencies. Let's say you're an introvert. Instead of forcing yourself into a high-energy networking event, you might thrive by scheduling one-on-one coffee chats. Or if you're highly conscientious, you might set specific, achievable goals to maximize your productivity. Wiseman shares a fascinating study where participants tailored their jobs, hobbies, and even fitness routines to match their personality traits. The result? They reported higher levels of happiness and satisfaction. The takeaway is clear. Success and fulfillment aren't about becoming someone else. They're about working with who you already are. This is the age-old question. Are we stuck with the personality we're born with? Wiseman offers a hopeful answer. While genetics play a significant role, research shows that personality traits can evolve over time, especially with intentional effort. For example, want to lower your neuroticism? Practicing mindfulness and gratitude can help you stay calm and emotionally resilient. Hoping to become more conscientious? Start small. Organize one drawer today and build on that success. Looking to boost your extroversion? Try initiating a simple conversation, like complimenting someone's outfit at the grocery store. The key is gradual, consistent change. Wiseman emphasizes that you don't need to overhaul your personality overnight. It's about gentle nudges outside your comfort zone. Understanding personality doesn't just help you. It can transform your relationships. Wiseman explains how differences in traits, like openness or agreeableness, can either complement or clash. For instance, two agreeable people might find it easy to compromise, while one high in openness paired with someone more traditional could lead to exciting new experiences, or tension. Here's a practical tip. Think about your partner's personality traits. Are they high in neuroticism? Offer reassurance during stressful times. Low in conscientiousness? Maybe don't expect them to show up early for dinner. When you understand each other's tendencies, you can navigate conflicts with empathy instead of frustration. Wiseman makes this chapter interactive with fun, research-backed exercises to explore your personality. Here are a few. For introverts, challenge yourself to strike up a brief conversation with a stranger, like complimenting a barista or chatting with a neighbor. For extroverts, spend a day unplugged, no social media, no big gatherings, just quiet reflection. For the spontaneous, pick one small area of your life, maybe your desk or a kitchen drawer, and organize it completely. For the worriers, start a gratitude journal and write down 3 good things that happen each day. These exercises aren't about transforming who you are. They're about stretching just enough to discover new strengths and possibilities. As Wiseman wraps up this chapter, and the book, he leaves us with an empowering message. Personality is a guide, not a limitation. It's a lens through which you can better understand yourself, connect with others, and make choices that lead to a fulfilling life. So let me ask you, what's one thing you've learned about your personality that helps you navigate life? Maybe you've discovered that you're more introverted and need time to recharge after social events. Or perhaps you've realized you're naturally high in openness and thrive on exploring new ideas. Whatever it is, embrace it. Self-awareness isn't about fixing flaws, it's about celebrating what makes you unique and using that knowledge to grow. What's the most surprising thing you've learned about yourself? Share it in the comments. I'd love to hear your thoughts as we close out this journey through 59 seconds.